Welcome back to Never Going Back. My name is Ryan Mack, president of the Optimum Institute of Economic Empowerment. We are on site in Morgantown, West Virginia. And Never Going Back is a weekly internet show dedicated to helping those individuals who are incarcerated and formerly incarcerated to give them tangible tips and tools to make sure they can say that I'm never going back to prison. We're down here in mountaineer country to essentially educate and inspire a lot of organizations that are working across the state with the demographic of at-risk youth. They flew us down here to make sure that we can inspire some of the facilitators to make sure that they're doing the right work with these youth, give them some ideas because we do a lot of work with at-risk youth, get some of our strategies that we've been doing so they can implement those strategies in their programs and just give them some inspiration to keep doing the good work and keep up the good fight. Because again, at-risk youth, just because they might have made some bad decisions in the past doesn't mean they can't make good decisions in the future. So we want to give them the support they need. This week's economic empowerment tip is in terms of FICO score. Pay your bills on time. 35% of your FICO score is a record of paying your bills on time. Look, I understand. Sometimes you might have a habit. You receive that bill in the mail. You put it on your dresser under other bills or other mess, and you kind of forget about it. You might even put it in a circular filing cabinet on the side of your dresser. So you want to make sure when you get that bill, if you don't open it up immediately and pay it and get into the habit of doing that, at least you want to pay it off within 7 days once you receive it. Or you want to designate at least 2 Saturdays, every other Saturday per month, that you designate that these are your 2 Saturdays where you will do nothing but in the morning you're going to get up and pay those bills immediately. Because again, I've seen FICO scores and credit scores go from 700 to 526 because someone decided not to pay their gas bill for an entire month. I've seen FICO scores get as much as 50 to 100 points off their final FICO score just because they missed one payment of a Verizon cell phone bill. So we want to make sure that we're paying our bills on time because, again, 35% of your FICO score is determined by this practice, and it's good habit forming to make sure you can get into the habit of paying your bills on time. Now, we're in Morgantown, West Virginia now. We're going to take a little trip over to Detroit, Michigan, and we're going to catch up with our good buddy Yusef Shakur. Yusef Shakur has been a community activist for quite some time, formerly incarcerated himself, but now he does some phenomenal work in making sure that other individuals, he can give them assistance who are coming out of prison to make sure they can also say, I'm never going back. We are here back in my neighborhood with a very special guest. This is Yusef Shakur. Thanks for coming out. Yusef Shakur has been doing phenomenal work in the neighborhood where I grew up part of the time in. My grandma grew up right down the street from where we're at. And Yusef, you've been in this neighborhood for quite a long time.
37 years besides the time I spent in prison.
Okay. And then, so now, Yusef, you have a very interesting story. We're standing here right now. We're sitting here in a bookstore in the middle of the neighborhood. And I kind of want the people to understand where you're coming from and where you've been at in order to get to where we're sitting at right now, because this is your bookstore. And if we can get a little bit of background of, because Yusef Shakur is the founder of Zone 8.
Yes.
And what is Zone 8, first of all?
Zone 8 is our neighborhood, the zip code 40208. And in the mid parts of the 80s, it developed into a gang that myself and some other young men co-founded as response to another rival gang. And we began to deal with each other as far as from a gang aspect from that point on. The early part, that's what I embodied from the time I went to bed to the time I woke up. I went against everything my mother taught me. You know, that kind of gave me an identity. You know, being a zone, being a gangbanger, not caring, led me to get kicked out of every school I went to. In and out the youth home at the age of 15, my mother made me the ward of the state. And she saw what I didn't see, which was I was possibly going to get killed for my activity or go to prison. And so I can only imagine that, you know, the burden that was on her heart to make that decision. But she was trying to save me from me. I came home, called myself trying to do good, ended up trying to kill myself because I just didn't feel good doing good because I had never done good in my life. And after that failure trying to kill myself, I ended up going back to what I knew best, which was gangbanging.
And so you're the founder of Zone 8, which was probably at the time, one of the most prominent gangs in the city of Detroit.
And that still is today.
And so, and you know, and these are something I don't think a lot of folks really understand in terms of the mentality of someone who wants to become a member of a gang. And as a founder of one, can you kind of walk the people through what makes people join gangs? What do they do when they join gangs? What's their mentality like?
I mean, the significant things where, for us, it wasn't necessarily joining a gang, it was developing a gang. And developing a gang was in response to someone being locked out of society, not having any real options or opportunities to seize what potential that we had. So the potential that we had became to be formed through gang banging. And we thought we was doing the right thing, protecting our neighborhood, protecting our families. But in reality, we was doing worse to the community. You know, when my mother sat me down and said, you know, a guy came to my house and tried to shoot you, a guy threw a firebomb in my house, and I'm looking at her, I hear what she's saying, but I'm not comprehending, because at the end of the day, I would have died for my mother, I would have killed for my mother, but looking at it, I'm the main culprit of bringing crime and harm to my mother's household. So, but it also creates an atmosphere of family. You know, a lot of guys growing up in the community are not part of a family, because the black family has been broken down to its bare minimums of individuals just trying to survive.
So is it more so a sense of belonging? Individuals want you to belong to something? Is that sense of security that they get of comfort to say that I am now a part of something that makes people join?
I mean, that it gives power, it gives hope. I mean, it gives all those things that reassures a human being, but it just gives it in a negative, in an undeveloped way. And as God morphs through that mentality, that becomes him. And like the former initiation for us in Detroit was, like, again, our neighborhood was Zone 8. So you might be from, technically you are Zone 8, because your parents grew up in it, but you wasn't a Zone 8.
Right.
But if a rival gang knew and saw you more consistent, they might have jumped on you, which was your former initiation, because, man, I ain't about to get jumped on no more, so I'm going to hang out with JoJo and them. So now I'm running with the crew. I'm beating up other guys. And that's how really a lot of guys began to join Zone 8 and how we began to grow.
And then, so now what was the change in you that got you, and now you said you spent some time in prison.
Yes.
What led to that? What led to the incarceration?
It was gang-related crime. So some of the homeboys went up to Northwestern High School and jumped on the football team, tried to take their coats, beat them up pretty bad. And actually, I didn't do that particular crime, but since it was gang-related, I was one of the prominent members, I got caught up in it. And the turning point for me was meeting my father in prison. And when I met him, he done something which was very dynamic. He gave me a book. And also at that point in my life, I was at my lowest point. And I'm reaching, I'm seeking for some form of understanding. But here in this animalistic environment, I don't know where to get it. So let me roll the dice with this man that knows my father, but he never been a father to me. And he was like, man, you made a mistake. And when he said that, it kind of, it made everything that much easier, because he was like, nah, you got to learn from your mistake. And he gave me the autobiography of Malcolm X. And more importantly, he reinforced what Malcolm, the model Malcolm became to many of us, because he was Malcolm to me at that moment. He was a beautiful example of what a black man should be. And every boy wants to be like their father. Right. And here was my opportunity to be like my father for the first time in the right way.